I was born poor, and I stayed poor until I was in my mid-20s. For most of my life, I lived with people who were also poor and/or came from poor families. Even when I did start making money, it wasn't like I was suddenly rolling in dough. It was only a few years later that I found myself to be solidly middle class. So growing up poor made me curious about something. Why do people stay poor? If you search this question online, you will find lots of videos giving you advice on how to get out of poverty. But that's not what I want to talk about today. What I want to talk about is why people stay poor. So why don't people get out of poverty? Well, there are plenty of reasons why. And honestly, if I tried to list all of them, we would be here all day. But I can give you 3 reasons that really stand out for me. The first reason that people stay poor is lack of access to quality education. Some countries, such as Finland, Sweden, and Canada, good schools are available to everyone, regardless of where they live or their socioeconomic background. However, in many other countries around the world, including the United States, children living in poor neighborhoods often attend underfunded schools with less qualified teachers, fewer resources, and lower expectations. These schools may not have the funding for extracurricular activities, meaning that students do and get the opportunity to develop critical social skills, which will help them later on in life. There is also a higher chance that these schools are located in areas which are dangerous, meaning that children are at risk of being exposed to violence and are more likely to become victims of crime. When children are exposed to violence or live in an environment where they are constantly worried about their personal safety, they are unable to thrive. This lack of stability makes it difficult for them to focus on schoolwork and develop to their full potential. Growing up in Compton, California, rapper and activist YG once said, "If your classroom walls are made of concrete and steel bars, you're never going to feel inspired." It isn't just exposure to violence and danger that creates an uninspiring learning environment. Many schools in poorer areas have overcrowded classrooms, old textbooks, and limited access to technology, according to the National Education Association in the United States. Students attending schools in low-income communities are disproportionately minorities and students with disabilities. This means that they are already at a disadvantage before they even set foot in the classroom, because teachers may not have adequate training to teach students with special needs. Furthermore, they are more likely to be suspended or expelled than their peers in wealthier schools, meaning that they are less likely to graduate and more likely to end up in jail or dead, according to a study by Stanford University. Students attending underperforming schools are more likely to drop out, earn less as adults, and be unemployed. A study published by the National Bureau of Economic Research found that students who attended better schools earned approximately 24% more as adults and were less likely to be unemployed. This shows that investing in schools in poorer areas could have long-lasting positive effects for individuals and society as a whole. And if that isn't bad enough, children growing up in poverty are more likely to suffer from malnutrition and other health problems, which affects their ability to learn. The second reason that people stay poor is lack of access to health care. When people living in poverty get sick, they often cannot afford to seek treatment, which allows illnesses to progress and become more serious. By the time they finally receive medical attention, the problem has become much worse and is more costly to treat. People living in poverty are also less likely to engage in preventative healthcare measures, such as regular checkups and screenings, which can detect diseases early when they are easier to treat. In the United States, 1 in 4 adults are unable to afford necessary medical care due to cost. On top of that, over 70 million people are uninsured entirely. This means that if they need medical attention, they won't be able to get it. As a result, chronic conditions go undiagnosed and untreated, causing a decline in overall health. Untreated illnesses and injuries can lead to disability, making it difficult for people to maintain employment and escape poverty. People living in poverty are also more likely to suffer from mental health problems, such as depression and anxiety. However, due to the stigma surrounding mental illness and a lack of access to affordable mental health services, these issues often go unaddressed, which can have devastating consequences. A study conducted by the Commonwealth Fund found that adults living below the poverty line were twice as likely to have a mental health condition compared to those above the poverty line. Furthermore, they were less likely to receive treatment for those conditions. Lack of access to mental health services can exacerbate existing financial struggles, making it even harder to break the cycle of poverty. The third reason that people stay poor is lack of access to financial resources. Banks are businesses that exist to make money by lending out deposits at higher interest rates than they pay customers on their deposits. This means that banks profit by borrowing money from those who have less money to spare and then lending it to those who need it more. Unfortunately, people living in poverty often find themselves excluded from the financial system, unable to access the resources they need to improve their economic situation. They may struggle to open bank accounts or obtain loans, credit cards, or mortgages, which are essential for building wealth. Without access to these financial tools, people living in poverty are unable to invest in education, start a business, or purchase assets, perpetuating a cycle of financial hardship. In addition, those living in poverty may face higher costs for basic necessities such as food and housing, further limiting their ability to save money and invest in their future. Payday loans are marketed as a quick and easy way for people to borrow money when they need it most. But in reality, they are a predatory lending practice that traps borrowers in a cycle of debt and high interest payments. The high interest rates and fees associated with payday loans can quickly add up, making it difficult for people to repay the loan and ultimately keeping them trapped in a cycle of poverty. Approximately 12 million Americans use payday loans each year, with most of them being women. Studies show that payday lenders target people living in poverty by offering them loans with extremely high interest rates and hidden fees. These loans are often advertised as a quick and easy way to access the cash you need, but in reality, they are a dangerous trap that keeps people in poverty. To make matters worse, people living in poverty are often subject to discriminatory practices in the job market, which limits their access to well-paying jobs and perpetuates their financial struggles. On top of that, people living in poverty are often denied the opportunity to build meaningful relationships and networks which can provide emotional support and access to resources that can help them break the cycle of poverty. One thing I think is important to mention is that these three factors are interconnected. Children growing up in poverty are less likely to receive a quality education, which means that they are less likely to have the skills and knowledge they need to secure well-paying jobs. Without access to quality education, it's difficult for people to escape poverty. Without access to healthcare, it's even more difficult. Not having access to financial resources makes it almost impossible to escape poverty. While there are government programs designed to assist people living in poverty, such as SNAP, TANF, and Medicaid, they are often underfunded and difficult to navigate. While these programs can provide temporary relief, they are not a long-term solution to the complex issue of poverty. There are multiple systemic barriers that prevent people from escaping poverty and achieving financial stability. However, despite these challenges, it is possible for people to overcome poverty. Many people have managed to break the cycle and achieve success through hard work, determination, and access to opportunities that allow them to showcase their talent and abilities. It's important to recognize the resilience and strength of those living in poverty, and to advocate for policies that promote equal access to education, healthcare, financial resources, and other essential services. By working together, we can create a society that provides everyone with the opportunity to succeed. That's it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please consider subscribe. You can watch another video here. Thanks for watching and take care.